Hello, friends. I thought I'd do a check-in. I've just finished about 3 months on the road and wanted to give you a little update on how everything's going and some observations I've had on things that I've seen as I've traveled around about half of the country now. Um, so, first of all, um, I have probably dispensed with a couple of the routines that I talked about in one of my earlier videos um, that may or may not have been predictable because they were unsustainable or just, pie in the sky. Um, the most significant one, I think, so far has been that I'm not packing up the night before a move as much as I was. I have found that I don't rest well if I have everything just kind of put away and I've got my my table and banquette collapsed and then just my little MacBook on the bench there. It feels very unsettling. Probably kind of like, right before you take a trip, for anybody, you're always a little paranoid that you're going to oversleep and miss your flight. And so you don't sleep at all. And I think that's kind of part of what's happening there. So I'm not doing that the way I was. I've just been kind of trying to plan my departures and the distance I have to travel so that I'm able to take my time in the morning and not have to rush out of a campsite. And fortunately, the way I've got things mapped out right now, there's not a long driving time, and most campgrounds have a check-in time of between 1 and 3, so that usually works out okay. Um, and I have also you may have seen in my maintenance and repairs video that I got rid of the refrigerator, and I was going to build a slide out tray for the space to put my Dometic cooler on it, and I may still get around to that, but I'm probably just going to enclose it because it does let air in, and it is kind of an escape hatch for Munchkin. So I'm probably just going to close that off for now and not worry about doing the slide out tray, and I just have my cooler on the other bunk. It's nice and accessible that way, and because I have to move it to the center part of the camper so I can plug it into my Yeti power station when I'm towing. Um, the the other problem and the main reason that I'm doing it this way is that when I'm collapsing the camper, the top part of the sink area folds down, and there's not clearance for it to fold down all the way without bumping into the Dometic cooler when it was in that cubby space. So I think I will probably end up just using that for some excess storage and just make it a nice little cabinet. Another thing I did as I was passing through my hometown, I stopped at my storage unit and I picked up my ice maker. I had been on the fence about it. I was going to bring it with me initially, and then I thought, no, it's too much weight and it's too much hassle, and I'm not going to need it, and because there's ice available in most places. Well, the thing is that I've discovered is that ice isn't always easily accessible, and it's also hard to store with the setup that I have. So I was buying bags of ice and then they were melting and I wasn't using them. So what I've ended up doing is I've got my ice maker and I can just plug it in and make some ice for when I want a smoothie or something else. And then I unplug it and it sits right next to my Dometic cooler, and that's working out very nicely. It's not a waste, and that's one of the big things that I've really been focused on for the last few weeks is trying to get my systems and my routine dialed in so that I don't have waste. I was throwing away a lot of food because not being able to store it properly. And now I think I've got a good solution on that. I'm very, very happy with the investment I made in my Dometic cooler, because it holds the perfect amount of food for a week, and it keeps it at just the right temperature, and I'm not having the kind of loss that I was having. So I'm very pleased about that. This place that I've stopped to this past few days, I didn't hook up my my camp stove. I just used my toaster oven, and so that's another thing that where I'm kind of adapting, is that I still have to pull it all out, because when I'm when I'm docked somewhere, if I want to be able to have access to my table and the space that's underneath it for things, I have to pull all that stuff out. But I set it up there. I didn't connect the gas canister, and I just used the toaster oven for what I was going to cook. And so I'm still kind of adjusting and adapting on those kinds of things. I am looking forward to being in one place for a couple of weeks coming up, where I'll have an opportunity to do some more cooking and film some videos on that and get those out for you guys. And I guess those are the main things that that I have adjusted since I was first setting out on everything and finding my legs on all of this. The setup and everything has gotten much better and much smoother. The only real hassle that I'm still facing is being able to get the trailer hitched when I'm ready to move it, because I don't have a backup camera on the car, and so there's still some adjusting, and it is such a particular hitch that it just has to be totally lined up properly. And if I'm in a campsite in kind of a wonky way, or if I have to go like over bumps or something, then that can totally throw off just these tiny little incremental movements that I have to make in order to get it perfectly aligned. Now, I have figured out that I can kind of push and nudge against the trailer hitch some, but I still have to have it pretty close. I can't have it like this far apart and then be able to push it in. So that's still the only thing that's kind of a hassle. Everything else I pretty much got dialed in, and a routine and a system on it, and it goes pretty smoothly in most cases. Every now and then I'll still run into a little snag on something where something's just not quite working right. I have had a couple of occasions recently where I couldn't get the door lined up and hitched properly, but it's usually it means that I haven't quite gotten the jacks squared, or I don't have it cranked as far as it will go to lift up. And so it's still figuring out those little quirks. But I wanted to also talk about some of the interesting things I've noticed in the different places I've visited. I don't know why this is the case, but apparently every place in this country has either a town called Prospect or a street called Prospect. And I don't know I'm sure there's some kind of historical significance to it, and why it was one that was named in all these different locations. Like there's always a main street, and also always a center street, or a Broadway or something like that. You're going to find that all over the place. Prospect is one of those that's a little unusual, so it's something that has caught my eye. And I mean, from East Coast to West Coast, I see it everywhere, and I just think that's kind of interesting. Another thing that I have found that is common, no matter where I am, no matter who I'm talking to or what types of people I'm talking to, people like to talk about directions. It's really funny. They well, so what road are you going to take? Are you going to take the US 10, or are you going to take the Highway 43, or are you gonna, if you went this way, you do it. And it reminds me so much of that Saturday Night Live skit about the Californians, and how they, making fun of how they're always like, oh, I'm gonna get on the 5, and then I'm gonna take that up to Sunset, and then I'll take that across to Gower, and or whatever. And but it's true of everybody. and I have people asking me all the time, so what route are you going to take? I'm like, I don't know. My GPS is going to pull it up for me and tell me which way to go. So that tickles me that seems to be a common thing all across the country as well. This is just a little aside, because churches are everywhere also, every flavor and variety you can imagine. But I was very surprised to run across a biker church. I mean, like one that specifically caters to biker gangs, or at least I don't know if they're gangs, but people who are motorcycle enthusiasts, we'll put it that way. And that was very fascinating to me, because that was one that I had not seen in all of my travels around the world, or around the country, and having paid attention to a lot of that. Another thing that has been kind of a big disappointment for me is that I've traveled through all these different locations where I've seen signs promising encounters with wildlife, whether it's bears or moose or elk or bighorn sheep, or a variety of other things. I've seen these signs everywhere, and yet I have not seen a single one. And not that I'm looking to have a standoff with a moose on the road I'm trying to travel or anything, but it's just it's so funny that I've gone through these areas where they're like, slow down, be really careful, watch out, because you're gonna, high likelihood of encounters with wildlife, and I haven't seen any. And I mean, there've been a couple of spots where I saw some wild geese or ducks, and some other things, small animals, but none of the big game wildlife that I was supposed to have encountered. So I don't know. I mean, I'm a little disappointed in that, but and this is a quirk of my perspective that I can't really explain, but there are people who agree with me on it, so I'm going to put this out there and see what you guys think. The sky is bigger in the west. I don't know why. I don't know if it has to do with the whole convex shape of our atmosphere, or and the globe and that kind of thing. But even when you're in areas that are heavily wooded and that kind of thing, when you see through that canopy, the sky is still just bigger, and it's just expansive, and it's spectacular. And I don't know, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. But it's definitely a thing. I'm just gonna say. Here's another thing that I have enjoyed noting as I've traveled through all of these tiny towns all over the country, is that every place has their non-normies. You have people who are, you're what you would expect to see in a small town, but then you have people with crazy dyed hair, or piercings, or wearing goth style clothing, or whatever. It just and no judgment on any of that, other than to say that it isn't what you would expect to see in a small town America. And it's great to see that, because it shows that that people are brave enough to be who they are, no matter where they are. And it does take courage a lot of times to stick out from the crowd and be a non-normie. in certain areas. So I just applaud that. Um, and the last thing that I'll note is that no matter where I go, traveling with a cat always catches people's notice. They, you expect to see people traveling with dogs and stuff like that, especially in a camper situation, or just being out and about. Having a dog with you is not a big thing. People they'll notice the dog and enjoy it, but they're not surprised by it. But everywhere I go, if I have Munchkin with me, they're like, "Oh, you have a cat," and they're very intrigued by the whole dynamic of traveling with a cat. And he's a character, and I when I set up all of my social media stuff for this whole journey, I created a TikTok account as well. And I within 2 posts, I figured out pretty quickly that people don't care about me whatsoever. But they eat up the posts about Munchkin. So at first I was a little offended by it, but then I thought, I'm just going to lean into it. I'll just make this platform all about his adventures on the road with me. And so if you have not looked at that, go check that out. I don't get posts up every day, or sometimes not even more than a couple of times a week, because he does a lot of sleeping, and that's only interesting a couple of times, because cats do sleep in strange positions and in strange locations, and so I capture those kinds of things, and then all of his other little quirky attitudes. One of his big things is that he will go take a nap somewhere, and then he'll wake up and realize that there's no one petting him, and he comes running across the camper yelling at me. Sometimes I'm on the phone with clients and stuff, and it sounds like I'm killing a cat, but I promise I'm not. He's just melodramatic. Another interesting quirk, and I've not been able to catch this on camera yet, is that every single time I sneeze, he does this little meow, as if he's saying bless you, and I say thank you back, and it's just kind of our routine. But anyway, so I hope that you guys will continue to follow me on this journey. I am trying to get some more videos edited on the places that I've visited. I've got a couple more that'll be coming up in the next week or two, and if there's anything else you're interested in knowing about this whole process, shoot me some questions in the comments, or there's an email. I think if it's not in the description, it is on the about part of the page, but it's info@highsmithcreative.com. You can send me questions there as well. But yeah, I hope that you guys are enjoying your summer, and I will see you on the road.